one of the hardest issues or things to talk about that I think is, and I think this is true for almost all Christians, is the issue of sharing faith with someone else. Sharing faith with someone who's not a Christian. And when pastors talk about it, all it tends to do for a lot of people is just bring in feelings of guilt and of not being good enough and not sharing faith enough. That's true for lots of people. For some people it's like, yeah, that's exactly what we should be doing. But that's about probably 3% of all Christians, I think, who when they hear a message about sharing faith with other people get all excited. For almost all other Christians it's, well, I'm trying, I'm doing my best, and it's really hard, and Pastor, quite frankly, you're not helping. So prepare to feel really bad for the next 30 minutes or so, and then, I don't know, go home and watch football and feel better about yourself. That's just to shorten the sermon, no, hopefully that's not what we do today. I have some friends that I've tried sharing my faith with. One fella, his name's Hassan, he's a refugee from Afghanistan, and I haven't actually seen him for 5 years or so. My wife actually saw him just a couple of weeks ago, which was just fantastic. We're hoping to see him. But I remember sharing faith with him as a teenager. When I was a teenager, so 18 years old, he was 18, and talking about Jesus, and the conversations that we had, they were good, went well, but in the end they didn't seem, as far as I can tell at least, to bear any fruit, to go anywhere. Another friend of mine, Jai, his name is, he became a Christian when I was a teenager. When I was 16, he became a Christian, and because of not just myself, but many friends who talked to him about Jesus. And then his life has been one of constantly in and out of the church and in and out of what would be, for want of a better term, a healthy lifestyle, regardless of whether it's Christian or not, a lifestyle that is good for him or not good for him. And I don't know where he's at right now with his faith. My brother doesn't go to church and considers himself agnostic and is really looks down on people that are Christians for being unintelligent and unwise, and that's just part of life. You've got your own stories, I'm sure, of people that you know that you've tried to share faith with, that sometimes it's gone well, perhaps, and other times you wonder what's going on with that person, or you wonder perhaps if it's even worth it. Is it even worth sticking your head up and talking about Jesus? And in some circumstances, you look at and you listen to the way people talk and you go, I'm definitely not going to bring up faith here. I'm definitely not going to talk about Jesus in this context because I know how I'll be treated as a result. And that might be with family members, it might be with friends, it might be with work colleagues, could be anywhere. I wonder if Jesus ever felt like that. I don't know if there's a question you've thought of, and you might even be thinking, Pastor can't say that, that's pretty much heresy. But I wonder if Jesus ever felt like that. Whether Jesus ever felt like, I'm putting in all this effort for absolutely no result. And not just like now, since he's died and risen again, but when he walked the earth. I wonder if Jesus ever felt like that. Whether he felt like he was making an effort, whether he felt like he was doing, and Jesus, of course, did everything right, but felt perhaps like he wasn't getting anywhere. Last week, Sean preached on a text, and it included Jesus' mother and healing Peter's mother-in-law, and it included also Jesus healing many other people. But what is interesting, particularly after what we hear in today's text, is that had no impact. In fact, before that even happened, and this was just before Sean's text, is that Jesus is in a synagogue and he casts out a demon in the synagogue, and Peter doesn't follow. Peter's clearly interested. But Peter doesn't become a follower of Jesus after seeing a demon cast out of a person. I don't know about you, but I would like to think that if I saw a demon cast out of someone, that whatever that person said to do next, I would do. I would hope that I would respond pretty well if I saw that happen with my own eyes, which Peter saw. Peter at least gets Jesus to come to his house. Peter at least gets Jesus to come over. At least I'm assuming that Peter's there because of the fact that straight after they leave the synagogue, they go to Peter's house and Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law. And Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law, but after Peter's mother-in-law is healed, no big statement of faith from Peter. No big, you're the man, I'll follow you wherever you go. None of that from Peter. In fact, Jesus then goes and heals all these other people at Peter's home. All these people at sunset, so at Saturday night effectively, so Saturday Jesus is healed, cast out the demon, then Saturday night all these people come over, get healed. Peter's still not following Jesus after all of this. And then at the start of Luke chapter 5, we hear that it's another day. We don't know how much later it is. But Jesus is then preaching on a boat, and he's preaching and he has to get onto Peter's boat. And there are crowds of people. We don't know how many people. The crowd might have been 50, it might have been 100, it might have been 1,000, it might have been more. And Jesus has to get onto the boat because of all the people there. So Jesus is clearly a popular guy, and Peter's there, he's around, but he's not yet following. He's not yet interested enough to be a part of things yet. Here's a question. Is Peter hanging around Jesus because of what Jesus is doing? Or is Jesus hanging around Peter? Is Peter hanging around Jesus because of what he sees Jesus doing? Or perhaps Jesus might be hanging around Peter? Because Peter, clearly we know from the Gospels and we know from church history, Peter's a big deal. I mean, the billion Catholics across the world think Peter's a big deal. I think Peter's a big deal. So Jesus clearly thought Peter was a big deal before the Catholics thought he was a big deal. So I think they're just following Jesus in that, at some regard. Isn't it true for each of us that in our lives, Jesus seems to hang around us more than we hang around Jesus? And this is true both of our life as Christians, as people who already know Jesus, and our lives also before we know Jesus, before we come to faith, before we start following. But Jesus makes a bigger point of being involved in our lives than what we make a point of being involved in Jesus' life, and that's how the whole of the Christian life is. That's how the whole of life is that, and this is not to make any of us feel bad, but God's a lot more interested in us and what we are up to than what we are interested in God and what God is up to. That's not to make anyone feel bad. That's just true. That's just fact. We're all in this same boat together of Jesus being deeply interested in every single one of us well before we're really interested in Jesus. And even when we know Jesus but don't be that interested from time to time. I tried to get one of our resident fishermen, but we couldn't tee it up, to come and talk to us about how fishing works. I don't know a lot about fishing, I don't think I'm very good at it, but I do know this, that if I stand here and I put bait on a hook and I cast it in any direction, I'm not going to catch a fish. It is fishing. I won't catch anything, but it is called fishing. Sometimes I think we need to think about Christianity like that and our lives following Jesus like that. One of the things that people like me complain about a lot, pastors, is we go, no one's becoming Christians in my church. I haven't brought anyone to faith lately. I haven't talked with anyone about Jesus. And I go, the thought occurs to me, and I have to recognise this as well, and go, have I spent any time with any fish lately? Because I'm not going to catch a fish if I don't spend any time with fish. If I want to go fishing, I need to get on a boat, or I need to go to the river, or I need to go to the beach and cast out my line. And I need to have something on my hook that the fish are actually interested in order to catch a fish. I can't just put a gumboot, which is what people, the comics always tell me that people catch. I can't put a gumboot on the end of a hook and just expect a fish to go sit in the gumboot and pull it out. I actually need something that interests the fish when I go fishing. So often Christians in the church, and this is again this is just a description, this is just us, this is just fact. It's not for guilt or shame or anything like that. It's just we tend to spend more time on dry land than what we do in the water, where the fish are. And then wonder why we don't catch any fish. Jesus likes fishing. And he starts fishing for Peter. And he casts out a demon from a man Peter probably knew. And then he heals Peter's mother-in-law. And then he heals people at Peter's home. And then he preaches on his boat. Should Jesus by this stage have given up on fishing for Peter after he did those 4 things? Or instead, perhaps, should Jesus do what Jesus did and change his bait? Change how he was trying to connect with Peter's heart. Change how he was trying to work with Peter so that Peter got what was going on. Simpson Sean preached last week about the importance of Jesus having taken this time out. I wonder if when Jesus took his time out and prayed, spent time with his Father in heaven, whether Jesus prayed about Peter. I suspect Jesus would have. I suspect Jesus would have said to Peter, hey look, said to his Father in heaven, I've tried all these things. You've told me to get Peter on board. You've told me to include Peter. I've tried all these things. None of them have worked so far. And God, his Heavenly Father, says to Jesus, hey look, I want you to do this. How about you take Peter fishing? And I don't know whether how Jesus would have responded. I don't know how this works. How do you have a conversation with yourself when you're God, but your Father, Son, I don't know how that works. But I wonder if Jesus would have said, but Peter knows all about fishing. Peter's the expert. How can I possibly talk to him about fishing? How can I possibly make a difference in this person's life? Everything else I've tried to help his family, I've tried miracles, I've tried all these things. Nothing's working. You want me to go to work on the thing that Peter is actually an expert at? God the Father says, yes. Don't quote me on that. When I get done for heresy, don't list that on the thing. But I think this is the best fishing story ever in the end. For this miraculous catch of fish that Jesus has with Peter, I think Jesus would have said that. It's just not written down, I don't think, for us. Jesus changes the bait and he catches Peter. I think it's what finally gave Peter a full realisation of who Jesus is and Jesus' ability. I think Peter probably didn't respect, at least not in the same way, people who were good at the things that Jesus did. But I think Peter had respect for other fishermen. I think Peter, when he saw that Jesus could fish, and fish in a way that he'd never seen before, finally woke up to who he'd been spending time with for all these days. It was when Jesus connected with Peter in the areas of life that Peter really knew about, that Peter woke up to what was going on. And of course, Peter hadn't followed, and so that explains a lot, doesn't it, when Peter says, "Go away from me, I'm a sinner. I didn't listen when you cast out the demon, I didn't pay attention then. I didn't pay attention when you healed my mother-in-law, and I didn't pay attention when you healed all these people, and I heard you preach to all these other people on the beach. But now that you can do what I can do, only better, now you've got my attention, and now I realise just what a sinner I am." I think we sometimes miss that things like this happen in the Gospels because we approach the Bible as if it's a holy book, which of course it is. But I don't think that's how God wants us to treat it. I don't think God wants us to go, oh, we have a Bible. I don't think that's actually how God wants us to treat the Bible. I think God wants us to treat the Bible as this is a whole range of things that happened when God's life and the life of people intersected. And amazing things happened and people's lives were changed. And so that's why we have what we have of Peter not following Jesus until the catch of fish. Because that's what happened. And then we see our life in Peter's life. We see our lives in the lives of the disciples. We see these links. And we see then the effort that Jesus went to get Peter. And that tells us that Jesus thought Peter was a great catch. And then we think of the effort that Jesus goes to catch any one of us. And that tells us that Jesus thinks that we, each and every one of us, are a great catch. Because he values us. Because he loves us. Because he sees us as important. And not just important just as who we are, even though that is the primary thing, but also for the role that we're going to play. When Jesus says then to Peter, "I'll show you how to catch people," Jesus is then saying to Peter, "I'll show you how to do for others what I have just done for you. I'll show you how to connect with others in a way that they understand. I'll show you how to love others in a way that they'll understand, so that when you communicate and when you speak with them, they'll be left in no doubt about who I am and what I can do." I want to just talk about fishing in the church, or fishing for people a little bit. Have you given up on fishing? Because I think some of us sometimes think that this is what a life of fishing is going to end up being like. That we're going to be so bored and we're going to be at it for so long that basically we're going to die fishing. And I mean, those skeletons look like they're happy, but I'm not sure they are. It's going to end up being boring. And we end up thinking, I think, sometimes that fishing is going to be the death of us. Because all we do every time we share our faith is we get met with nothing, no catch. And instead we end up with criticism, and instead we end up with people just badgering us about how we need to be doing X, Y, or Z in order to change what happens. We think there's no opportunity. Clearly they never got off the boat to have a bite to eat or have a rest or anything like that. So, if you have given up fishing, I just want to talk about some of the baits that we actually have available for us as Christians. I want to talk about what baits you might have tried and have a think about some of these. The bait of relationship. Jesus and Peter knew each other. well before Peter started following. And one of the things I think we need to consider, just when it comes to being good bait for people, is forming a genuine relationship with people when it comes to sharing faith. There's a reason why the people standing on street corners with megaphones don't get good results. There's no relationship. It's also true that people need to get to know Jesus over a period of time before they choose to follow. Remember, Jesus' own disciples, at the very least, didn't believe that Jesus died and rose from the dead for 3 years. If a Pharisee came up to one of Jesus' disciples and said, "What do you believe about Jesus?" And they said, "Well, I'm just following him." And they go, "Don't you believe that he died and rose again?" And they're like, "It hasn't happened yet." It hasn't happened yet in their life. So they need relationship. We all need relationship with Jesus first before we come to recognise his death and resurrection. Favours. For the people that you are trying to attract to the Christian faith, are you doing things for them? Jesus, he was Peter's mother-in-law. Jesus does something nice for Peter with no expectation of anything in return. Spiritual power. Now, I'm not expecting you to all of a sudden start going and working miracles in the general community and casting out demons and healing the sick and all that sort of stuff. If you do that, great, come talk to me. I want to hear about it and see how we can use it somewhere else. That would be amazing. So if you can do that, amazing, brilliant. But just for those of you who do happen to have some spiritual gifts in these areas, please use them. Rest and purpose. One of the greatest things that Christians can use to show the power of God is that we trust God enough to rest and to rediscover our purpose. One of the greatest things that we can do to show the power of God is to rest and rediscover our purpose. Depending on which denomination you're from, if you're a Lutheran, Catholic or Anglican, it's the third. If you're anything else, pretty much it's the fourth commandment, is remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now, I believe the commandments are ranked. I believe that if you get the first commandment right, all the rest you'll get right. If you get the first two right, all the rest you'll get right. I think God deliberately ranks them. Do you know what comes after remembering the Sabbath? Number 5, don't kill people. Number 6, if you're not a Lutheran, Catholic or Anglican or Orthodox. So God's saying, if you rest in me, you won't kill people. If you get your relationship right with me and are rested and are hearing from me regularly and taking time out to be with me and spending time just letting me take care of the world and you trying to take care of the world all the time, you won't try and exert control over the world and exert your own version of justice by going out and killing people. That's what God's saying when he ranks the commandments. When you have the courage to rest, you display to others that you believe God's in control of this world. Have you tried compelling evidence? One of the greatest mistakes Christians often make is this claim, which is fine amongst us. It's not fine with the rest of the world. The Bible says it, I believe it. That doesn't work. Because the Bible's not an authority for the rest of the world. And so we need evidence. And we shouldn't be afraid of evidence and proof if our faith is based on truth. So when someone talks about evolution, don't be afraid. Engage with it. I happen to believe that the world is very old. Very, very old. I don't know how old. I'm not a scientist, but I certainly don't believe the world's 6,000 years old. And if you believe that, that's great. You can believe that. That's fine. But when I engage with a non-Christian, an antagonistic non-Christian, I'm not going to argue details on that. What I can prove, and what all serious scholars believe is that Jesus Christ is a real person and really did all the things that the Bible says he did. And that these things can actually be verified scholarly by the secular world. The only thing that the scholars debate is whether or not Jesus rose from the dead, but what they don't debate is that his disciples certainly believed he did and were willing to die for that belief. Atheist scholars have no doubt that Jesus' disciples genuinely believed that Jesus died and rose again. And the only thing they can't explain is why, outside of it actually happening. The Apostle Paul is recognised worldwide as being a true figure in history who changed the Middle East and the area around Greece, Rome, all of that. None of that's debated. None of that is just dismissed. About 30, 40 years ago it was dismissed, but then the people who were saying that were actually found to have been fraudulent. So if you've got university professors who are saying that this is all fake, they need to update their research. Nothing against university researchers, they're excellent people. Clear teaching. I hope that what I teach here as a pastor is clear. I really hope. And if it's not, please tell me. But I also hope that you can check it out. And that you don't just have to believe it because I say it. That just because someone with a microphone says something that you have to accept that it's true. I hope that you can go and research that. As Christians, we need to be clear on what we teach. We need to make sure that our teaching is consistent. There are two more. This is the first one that I think actually have more impact than all the rest and help with all the rest. Abundant generosity. This is the kind of giving that you can only do if you believe that God always has enough. It's the kind of giving that you can only do if you believe that God always has enough. That comes through handling finance the way God wants you to, or outside the realm of finance, handling your time the way God wants you to, being wise with it. The wiser you are with your time, your energy, your resources, you'll find the more God gives in those areas. Because you'll find that you have more than what you think. If you don't have much in one area, use another. And powerful sacrifice. So I'm not talking about just giving up a little bit here and there, but giving when it hurts you. All of those things on that list, Jesus used. All of those things were part of how Jesus fished. Relationships, favours, doing things for people, his spiritual power, resting and reworking purpose, evidence, the signs and the miracles, clear teaching, abundant generosity, think the feeding of the 5,000, and his own powerful sacrifice. So again, back to us. And this is one of the key issues, I think, when it comes to sharing faith. When you share faith with people, or when you have a thing within you that says, I need to talk to so-and-so about Jesus, do you fish with faith or in order to avoid fault? In other words, do you do it because you want to, or because you're going to feel bad if you don't? Still tossing up whether I say this or not, so I'm going to say it now that I've said that. If you're sharing faith with someone in order to not feel bad that you don't, then don't. Then don't. Do it because you can. you want to. It's coming from a good place. Coming from the work of God in your life. Not a fear of what God might say if you don't do it. Or what someone else might say. Don't do it due to guilt or shame or manipulation. Do it because you trust Jesus. But as you do it, be aware that, like all good fishermen know, you need to know where the fish are, you need to be patient, and you need the right bait. It might take multiple sets of bait. But before doing that, I want to ask, what is the state of your nets? When Jesus got Peter to cast the nets over, first of all, Peter was mending his nets. And that's what we always need to be mindful of, is the state of our nets when we're fishing. And there's two ways where that's true. First of all, how are we going as a person? Because sometimes the Christian life, and just life in general, is hard. And sometimes we need to mend our nets before we go fishing. Otherwise, we might cast the net out and one fish swims in and the net breaks. The other thing to think about in terms of our nets is, if there are multiple holes in your nets, you won't catch anything anyway. If you've got something in your life that you know you need to deal with God, you need to deal with it. You need to get that area of your life worked out. If you just don't about faith and you want to go fishing, find the answers. Do some research. Do what you want to do with the research. And of course, get help. So a couple of things to finish off on. First of all, is Jesus asking you to fish for someone in particular? See, there's three kinds of fishing. There's net fishing. Well, three kinds of fishing that I know about. Wish we had someone here who knew about fishing who could have a microphone instead of me. Probably do, but I've got a microphone. Three kinds of fishing that I'm aware of. Net fishing, of course, where you just catch a big lot at once. Line fishing, where you throw out your line and you see what bites on the end of the hook. And then there's spear fishing. Is God asking you to spear fish, perhaps? Is there someone now don't go stabbing people, right? Just didn't hear that from a pastor. But is there a particular fish in your life? Is there a person that God wants you to pray for and reach out to and connect with and love and sacrifice for and give for? Finally, I just want to finish with this. Jesus is always fishing for you. Jesus is always fishing for you. Your experience of the Christian life, I know, is, if it's anything like mine, and mine's like this, is I keep on having to get back on the hook. God will ask me to do something and I'll go off and do something else, and God will say, no, come back and do this. And so God's always calling us back, always bringing us back. And so Jesus does this by living courageously with us, by constantly loving us, graciously teaching us, but sometimes quite strongly challenging us, obediently dying for us as he did on the cross. He's risen from the dead for us. And then he asks us to do the same. And I want to ask you if perhaps that's the bait that Jesus has for you that you need to bite onto. How is Jesus asking you to follow him? Because this is the end point of the Christian life, is that if we never end up recognizing that Jesus asked us to do the same, we end up jumping off the hook. It's fantastic that Jesus died and rose again for us. And that's great news, and it's the gospel, and it's the good news, and that's what we always want you to know and live with. But in the end, we're asked to follow. Let's do the same. Let's pray. Father God, thank you. Thank you that Jesus came fishing for each and every one of us. Thank you that you lived and died and rose again. But thank you that he said to Peter, I'll make you a fisher of people, and that he says the same to us. Father, help us to know what that might look like in our own life. Help us to do it not just because we feel like we have to, but because we want to. And so we ask you to make that change in us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Please stand and we'll sing.